So I'm James Tartaglia, a philosophy professor with particular interest in the meaning of life and nihilism. So I thought I would take a look at the views of Jordan Peterson, because he talks about this, and he's, they say, one of the most influential intellectuals in the world, and professional philosophers don't ever talk about his views, or at least I've never noticed anybody do so. So I thought I'd have a look and see what they are. Now, I don't claim to be an expert who's like, I can see that he's done thousands of podcasts, etc., and written various books, but I've taken one of his representative books, Beyond Order, and I've looked at what he says about the meaning of life and nihilism. I'm going to explain what I think he's saying, and then I'm going to tell you what I think of it. So, there's a part of the text where he's talking about what it's like to be a famous speaker, like he is, and he's saying that you have to try and achieve, as he puts it, rapt attention. Am I getting your rapt attention? He says if you're doing well, then the people in the audience are focused with laser-like intensity on whatever you are saying. Are you focused with laser-like intensity on what I'm saying? And then he goes on to say that responsibility is not an easy sell. Okay, so that's something I knew about Peterson. He's into responsibility, tidying your room, and this kind of thing. So, it's a very difficult thing to sell, and yet he's able to do it. Okay, he's able to get people's rapt attention, and they'll be focused with laser-like intensity when he's talking about responsibility, because he's such a fantastic speaker. He goes on to say, parents have been striving forever to make their kids responsible. Actually, no, that's unfair. It's not because he's such a fantastic speaker. That's part of it, but it's also because the idea is really important, and deep down in all of our consciences, we know that. That's what he'd say. Okay, so parents have been striving forever to make their kids responsible. Society attempts the same thing with its educational institutions, apprenticeships, volunteer organisations and clubs. He might even consider the inculcation of responsibility the fundamental purpose of society. But something has gone wrong. We have committed an error, or a series of errors. We have spent too much time, for example, much of the last 50 years, clamouring about rights, and we are no longer asking enough of the young people we are socialising. So, we're giving all these young people rights without making them realise that they have responsibilities too. It's like JFK, isn't it? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Okay, right? So people have got to learn to take responsibility. On the other hand, I would say that rights are pretty important, like free speech and free healthcare, I would add as a Brit, and being free against people discriminating against you, and it does rather make me wonder already if there's some kind of right-wing agenda going on here, that you should only get what you deserve, and you only deserve to have rights if you take responsibility and hence play your part in society. So if you're some crack addict on the street, just die because you haven't earned your rights, because you.
If they would rather die, perhaps they had better do so, and decrease the surplus population.
Well, I hope that's not what's going on, but it makes me suspicious. Anyway, he goes on, we've been telling them for decades to demand what they are owed by society. We've been implying that the important meanings of their lives, okay, now we're into the meaning of life talk, the important meanings of their lives will be given to them because of such demands, when we should have been doing the opposite, letting them know that the meaning that sustains life in all its tragedy and disappointment is to be found in shouldering a noble burden. Okay, so if you want to have a meaningful life, you've got to shoulder a noble burden. You've got to take responsibility. Now, the first thing that occurs to me here, knowing these debates, is this guy talking about the meaning of life, i.e. a cosmic purpose for human beings, a reason why we're significant within the grand scheme of things? Or is he talking about, this idea of, getting some meaning in your life, feeling that what you're doing is worthwhile, and feeling that other people feel that what you're doing is worthwhile too? Okay, so is he talking about meaning of life, the big cosmic thing, or meaning in life? Well, amazingly, as we're going to see, he's talking about both at the same time. So we'll let me carry on. Because we have not been doing this, okay, teaching our kids the need to take responsibility, they have grown up looking in the wrong places, and this has left them vulnerable to easy answers and susceptible to the deadening force of resentment. What about the unfolding of history has left us in this position? How has this vulnerability, this susceptibility come about? Okay, well then he goes into his Nietzsche story. He obviously agrees with Nietzsche that the death of God occurred in the sense that religious beliefs ceased to be intellectually viable at the end of the 19th century. So this was going to lead to nihilism. The way it works, according to Nietzsche, is Christianity had invested everything good in the afterlife. This is just the valley of the shadow of death. Okay, this is terrible. Life is rubbish. Okay, but if you're a good Christian, you go to heaven and everything's all wonderful. Okay, so we thought everything good was in heaven. Then we become atheists. We don't believe in heaven anymore. So everything good's gone. So we think that the world is shit. All right, we're nihilists. We think it's all terrible because all the values been blown up because that was in heaven. We don't believe in heaven anymore. Okay, so Jordan Peterson has accepted this Nietzschean story, and he thinks we are in the midst of nihilism, and he thinks that's why young people won't take responsibility and clean their rooms, etc. Okay, they don't have meaningful life. The meaning of life is left them, and the meaning of life is only to be found in taking responsibility and shouldering the burden in society or something like that. Okay, fascinating little insight into how he thinks nihilism arises. He says, and it's when somebody's trying to improve themselves, when they're trying to listen to their conscience. He says, so he talks about a kind of internal tension. So let's use the example. You eat too many cream cakes and you're overweight, and something inside you tells you shouldn't eat those cream cakes, but another part of you says, yum, I just want to carry on. Okay, so he says, you confront your discomfort, you note your disunity, the bit that says yum to the cakes and the bit that says, ooh, you get a bit overweight, and the chaos that comes with it. You ask yourself, you pray to discover what you did wrong, and the answer arrives. You ate too many cream cakes, and it is not what you want, because you want to carry on eating cream cakes. And he goes on, he says, and part of you must therefore die so that you can change. The cream cake liking part has to die so you can become a stronger character. So Nietzschean. And the part that must die, he says, struggles for its existence, puts forward its rationale and pleads its case. It says, those cakes really are yummy. And it will do so with every trick in its possession, employing the most egregious lies, the bitterest, most resentment eliciting memories of the past, and the most hopelessly cynical attitudes about the future. Okay, get this bit. Indeed, about the value of life itself. Right? So, because you can't have the cakes, you start to think, what difference does it make if I'm overweight? Life's pointless anyway. You're cynical. You don't take any value in anything. You're a nihilist. Right? So there's nihilism for you. It arises because you haven't got enough self-discipline. Right? You're too lazy. You don't want to call the heat of conscience, the call of conscience, which tells you to give up those cream cakes and start working for the good of society, to shoulder the noble duty. Really? Because nihilism just seems to me to be the view that there is no meaning of life, that there's no cosmic purpose. Okay, I don't see that that's some kind of laziness or hatred of my conscience that's telling me think that. It's just an appraisal of the situation. It's just the fact that there's no evidence for any cosmic purpose, and it's just taking everyday life seriously, in which we walk around and talk to each other and eat lunch and go to bed, get up the next morning, clean our teeth, go to work. What's supposed to be the overall cosmic purpose of that stuff? So it's just taking everyday life seriously and being suspicious of human beings wanting to evade death and achieve some glorious, noble, cosmic end in the sky. Weird wishful thinking. Let him continue. He says, but you persevere and discriminate, judge, and decide exactly why you did what you did was wrong. And you start to understand by contrast what might have been right. And then you determine to start acting in accordance with your conscience. You decide that it is a partner, despite its adversarial form. Okay, so it's attacking you, and it's saying, really cut down on those cream cakes and get out there and work for the international charity. Okay, and you realize that actually it's a partner because it's making you a better person. Okay, you put all that you've discovered to be right into action. You begin your ascent. You grow to be a better person. You start to monitor yourself ever more carefully to ensure you are doing the right thing. Reasonable advice. Listening to what you say, watching yourself act, trying not to deviate from the straight and narrow path. That becomes your goal. Reasonable enough. Okay. Thing is, though, not everybody's conscience tells them the same thing. Some people's conscience tells them appalling things, as we know from history. Some people's, to take a more trivial example, some people's conscience says, who gives a damn about eating cream cakes? And some people says, or who gives a damn about leaving your room in a mess, for example. Anyway, so conscience is totally socially dependent, individually dependent, pretty much. Anyway, he carries on. An idea begins to take shape. I am going to live my life properly. I'm going to aim at the good. I'm going to aim at the highest good I can possibly imagine. Now all the parts of you taking care of your future self are on board. You are all aimed in one direction. You are no longer a house divided against itself. You are standing solidly on a firm foundation. You are no longer so easy to dissuade or discourage. Your resolution trumps your nihilism and despair. Well, I think nihilism is true. I'm not in despair, and I'm completely committed to philosophy. So if it's dedication you're worried about, you certainly don't need to have a meaning of life. Is philosophy the highest good that I could possibly manage? Well, I like it, and I think it was aiming high, yeah. But I could have done more good in the world, yeah. I mean, I could have gone and risked my life to help people in some war zone or whatever. Not everybody can do that. So, can JP, Jordan Peterson really say that becoming a psychologist and then a sort of a celebrity was the highest good he could possibly manage? Really? I don't know. Maybe a meaning of life would help you to motivate in what you're doing, but I'm afraid it seems to me that if you want to be a rational person, then you have to believe what's most likely to be true, and it seems very unlikely that there is any kind of cosmic purpose. But Peterson seems to believe in one, so let's try and make sense of that. I'll let him carry on. He says, the struggle you have had with your own tendency to doubt and dissimulate protects you against the unwarranted and cynical criticism of others. There is a high goal, a mountain peak, a star that shines in the darkness, beckoning above the horizon. Its mere existence gives you hope, and that is the meaning without which you cannot live. What meaning exactly? Which meaning of life was this? Which cosmic purpose? Right? Listen to what he says. Its mere existence gives you hope. Its mere existence. That sounds a bit like he doesn't know what it actually is. I don't think he thinks it's a number 42. I think it's something. He thinks it's something very, very serious, right? But what exactly? Let's try and work that out. He says, the meaning that sustains life in all its tragedy and disappointment is to be found in shouldering a noble burden. We said that earlier, okay? And I also said it sounds like kind of meaning in life. So, if I'm doing my bit for society, then, I feel that I'm worthwhile and other people think it's worthwhile. But it wouldn't be a sort of cosmic purpose of reality, okay? But then think back. When he's attacking that malicious, dying part of yourself that doesn't want to take responsibility for shouldering a noble burden, right? The cream cake eating part, the sloth within you, which has been promoted by a culture of rights to things like free healthcare or being protected from discrimination, that dying part within you that tells you that life is meaningless in a metaphysical sense, okay? Well, Then he's talking about the meaning of life, right? You're a nihilist. You think that life itself is meaningless. When you're trying to, when the cream cake eating part of you is dying and trying to persuade you to continue to, that life doesn't matter, that it's all insignificant, then he's talking about the meaning of life, right? So it seems that he must think, when he says the meaning that sustains life in all its tragedy and disappointment is to be found in shouldering a noble burden, he can't just mean, hey, doing your bit for society is what makes your life feel meaningful, right? And that's meaning in life. He must mean, no, that's actually, doing your part in society is actually the cosmic purpose of your life, okay? He actually does mean a metaphysical meaning of life. Okay. The noble burden which you contribute to by tidying your room or writing best-selling books or presumably doing any decent job like collecting the bins is somehow the cosmic purpose of reality. Okay. But really, what is the cosmic point in doing that stuff? There's a point for us, of course, right? Somebody's got to take away the bins, and we all need a bit of intellectual life, so it's good that people like Peterson write these books, but surely there's no cosmic point to all that. I mean, if there was, it's just the stuff that goes on planet Earth, right? There's no point in any of the other planets or, all these thousands of galaxies that exist. Well, he seems to think the cosmic point is revealed in religious experience. And this is where it gets really weird, okay? So he says, religious function has enough commonality across people to make us at least understand what religious experience means. Then he says, listen to this, particularly if we have had a taste of it at some point in life. So he has, right? Maybe this is common knowledge, I don't know, okay? But obviously from what he's saying there, he's had a religious experience, okay? So maybe this is what told him the meaning of life. So here we go. What does that imply? It might be that the true meaning of life is available for discovery, if it can be discovered at all, by each individual alone, although in communication with others past and present. It may well be, therefore, that the true meaning of life is not to be found in what is objective, but in what is subjective but still universal, i.e. in your own personal experience, which he's already said in the previous paragraphs that science cannot make sense of. Right? Science cannot make sense of experience, he says. So, what are we to conclude? Presumably, Peterson had a religious experience in which he heard the call of his conscience, and his conscience told him to spread the word of responsibility to the world, to sort of teach people to tidy their rooms and fight woke and rights culture, etc. And then he goes on to say the existence of conscience, for example, provides some evidence for the view that the meaning of life is subjective. Well, it doesn't, because, loads of states are subjective. Hate is subjective, right? So there's as much reason to think that, hating other people and trying to kill them is the meaning of life. So no, the existence of conscience provides absolutely no evidence for the idea that the meaning of life is subjective. And then he goes on, as does the fact that religious experiences can reliably be induced chemically, by which he means LSD or mushrooms, as well as through practices such as dancing, chanting, fasting, and meditating. Wow, he must get invited to some amazing parties. But really, it strikes me as one of the weirdest things I've ever read. I mean, surely the fact that these experiences can be reliably induced chemically is the main reason to be suspicious of them, right? Okay, you're taking you're putting chemicals in your brain that's making it malfunction. Right? I mean, why would that show that you should trust them? It's a very weird thought. And anyway, if there's anything about these experiences which have been very important to our history, there's no question of it. It's any universal factor. It's a kind of feeling that you're part of a single universal consciousness. That's nothing to do with responsibility. That's just the baggage that Peterson took to his religious experience, just like a Christian would take Christian baggage, a Muslim would take Muslim baggage. He goes on, additionally, the fact that religious ideas are capable of uniting vast numbers of people under a single moral umbrella, although such ideas can divide across sects as well, also indicates something universal calling from within. No, it doesn't. You just completely undermine your own point with that bracket where you say, although such ideas can divide across sects as well. So it doesn't indicate something universal because the ideas can divide people. Religious experiences are found across all the great religions of our world, many of which fight each other even at present. They're a bit like conscience, really, religious experience. Everybody's is a bit different. To the extent that there's any kind of unity, as I said before, it's this idea of merging with a universal consciousness, feeling that yourself is unreal and feeling you're part of something bigger. Anyway, Peterson goes on, why do we so easily assume that nothing about that is real, given its apparent commonality and necessity? Given as well the near certainty that the capacity for valuing is an ancient evolved function, selected for by the very reality we are attempting to define and understand. What, so we're naturally selected to realise that we're part of the universal consciousness? You think the universal consciousness would just know and hence wouldn't need to bother with natural selection? Anyway, what was the survival value of that? Okay, right. That's enough. I think we've seen enough to understand what his view is, right? So I will try now to say essentially what his view. I'll summarise it. Okay, so the collapse of religious belief has led people to nihilism, just like Nietzsche said it would. We invested all value in the supernatural, we cease to believe in the supernatural, and then we start to think that life is meaningless. Okay, and this is the most stupid and self-indulgent and destructive thing you could possibly think of, something like that. Okay, the way out of this is heed the voice of your conscience, which tells you to work hard for the good of society. And this is revealed most clearly in religious experience. And religious experiences embody in a kind of subjective manner which we can't understand scientifically what the cosmic purpose of reality is. But the experiences also, via our conscience, pass on to us a message about how we get meaning within our own lives, how we do something useful for our society, you know, what your calling is. And what do I think of that? Well, I think Nietzsche was conclusively proved wrong. We've seen since in the last 100 years that people are perfectly capable of being completely committed to projects without having a false belief in a meaning of life. You know, there has been no nihilistic collapse. I think the voice of your conscience is completely dependent on your background, your values, and your reasoning and thoughts. It needn't be a conscience that tells you to take responsibility and work for the betterment of society, although Peterson's clearly was. It seems to me that the only core content to religious experience has absolutely nothing to do with conscience. That's just how you might take it if conscience and public service were something like in your background that you were worried about, you were preoccupied by it. Just as a Christian might take something about the need for self-sacrifice or whatever. If those experiences show anything, it's that we're part of a universal consciousness, but that universal consciousness might be completely meaningless, as I imagine it probably is. And so what? Doesn't affect us, does it?